Chẳng hạn như là công cha, như núi Thái Sơn nghỉ mẹ, như nước trong nguồn chảy ra. Hoặc là cô bé đó nói là em thích nhất là câu trống rỗng là trống kêu to. Thì nếu mà các em không hiểu thì các em có thể về hỏi gia đình về câu đó. Trống rỗng là trống kêu to. Nên từ lúc đó thì Thúy Hằng tiếp tục nói thôi mình có mệt mỏi thì mình cũng muốn tiếp tục, là tại vì mình muốn bắt một cái cầu giữa tuổi trẻ lớn lên ở đây với tuổi lớn hơn, bức cha mẹ qua đây không hiểu được cái cách sống của tuổi trẻ ở đây, và tuổi trẻ ở đây không hiểu cái cách suy nghĩ của người lớn ở bên Việt Nam. Và cái cách mà tốt nhất Thúy Hằng nghĩ mình có thể bắt được cái cầu này là tuổi của các em ở đây, ở trong đại học, lớn lên học ra 20 mấy tuổi, lên tới 30 mấy tuổi, đến tuổi của chị cũng là lớn hơn nhưng mà không những là già, nên mình có thể giúp được hai cái generations đó, hai kẹt đạn nói tiếng Anh ha, thế hệ, đúng rồi. Dạ, mình có thể bắt được cái cầu cho hai thế hệ hiểu nhau hơn. Và nó bắt đầu Thúy Hằng nghĩ là từ cái cách ăn mặc của mình, từ cái thức ăn của mình và từ cái ngôn ngữ của mình, thì nó làm cho mình là một người Việt Nam. Nên mình những hành động của mình nó có thể thuần túy hơn, mình tôn trọng người lớn tuổi hơn, mình tôn trọng người mình nghĩ tôn trọng nhau là vì tuổi tác. Tại vì lý do đó mà ông bà cha mẹ cô chú bác ở chung một nhà, và mình có cái tôn trọng đó. Đó là lý do mà Thúy Hằng tuy mệt mỏi nhưng mà muốn tiếp tục và kêu gọi các em nếu mà muốn tham gia với cộng đồng của Miss Vietnam Washington thì làm ơn xin liên lạc chị khi nào. Cửa cũng mở và tay chuẩn bị để chào đón và ôm đón các em. Nam nữ đều được hết, chứ không phải là Miss Vietnam Washington là của phụ nữ thôi. Cảm ơn.
Thank you everyone for sharing. Hearing your stories of how you guys all started just as youth here, college students, who had dreams just like Anh Nguyễn and Hằng said, and just had ideas and, built upon that, and years later came out to be great leaders in the community. It's really inspiring for me, and I'm pretty sure it's really inspiring for many of us out here too. So thanks for sharing. And today we're talking about leadership and how we want to build leadership in our community. So leadership is kind of a tough one to tackle because not everyone has the same definition of what leadership is or how to carry out leadership. And so my next question is, how do you define leadership, or what does leadership mean to you? And
I will give you a really brief introduction about how I did get involved in the community, and I wonder if some of the young people in this room can relate to that. I grew up in the suburbs, so I wasn't surrounded by a whole lot of colored communities, and it wasn't until I was at UW and there was an Asian American Studies class that talked both about the history of Asian Americans in the United States as well as their unique circumstances when they're here. That opened my eyes to a lot of different communities' histories and their contributions to our area. And it really amazed me, the different stories, depending on whether you were coming from Vietnam or China or any other Asian country. And that is something that you take with you and is a part of your identity when you're in the United States. I was exposed to the International Examiner newspaper when I was at UW, and I always enjoyed writing, and I thought if I could combine both of those interests into one, maybe I could make an impact on the community. And I've had the privilege of working at the International Examiner for about 6 years now, 3 years as the editor-in-chief. And I can say that when I started off as the editor, you serve both as the editor and the executive director of a nonprofit, because it's also a nonprofit newspaper, and to my understanding, the only nonprofit pan-Asian American publication in the country. And when you serve in that role, you end up being forced to be a leader, whether you want to be or not, at least for that small organization. And I did not ask to be a leader, but you have to rise to the occasion in order to do this for the community. And one thing that I do know I've cherished a lot and appreciated is working with young people. And that was something that's very unexpected. I really enjoy mentoring and working with young people and helping them find their calling in this life. And I think there are a lot of young people, even when you're in college and you're very ambitious and you think you know who you are or you think you know what path you want to take, a lot of times life throws you a lot of curveballs and you evolve a lot as a person and you change. And it's really important to have people in the community that are there to nurture you, support you, and whatever goals that you have, whatever that goal may be. And I think that's something that someone who's is relatively new to the Vietnamese community, truthfully, I've only been engaged with it maybe the last 2 years. So I have both the perspective of someone who's on the outside looking in, as well as someone who's gotten their feet a little bit wet. And I can tell you that something that we should emphasize is mentorship with our younger people. And I'm not talking about just only having leadership programs, although those are a really important component of that formula, is working with young people one-on-one, for them to know that there are people in the position that maybe they would want to aspire to one day, and work with them one-on-one, nurturing that relationship and encouraging them to pursue these goals, because it takes a lot of courage, I think, to sometimes break free from the traditions, not traditions, but I mean the goals perhaps your parents have for you that may not be the ones that you have for yourself. And I can speak to that myself, being a writer, and I'll tell you, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, as many of our parents probably wanted us to be, am I right? Be a doctor, an engineer, and there's nothing wrong with those goals, and there's nothing wrong with your parents wishing that for you. They come from a place of love. But for myself, I can say that if I hadn't pursued writing and struggled with that and had the courage to pursue it, I wouldn't be here today to be able to speak with all of you. So that's something that I would encourage in all of you, is to pursue what you were born with, that you really care about, you're passionate about, and find that person in the community, hopefully, or just in the general Asian American community, and find that person that can really help nurture that in you and have you rise to that occasion.
So when I grew up, I wanted to be a hypnotherapist and help people lose weight and quit smoking. I thought that was really cool until I hypnotized my little brother and, tried to tell him that he wouldn't feel any pain if I puncture him with like a pin. And that didn't work. So then I went into college and decided I want to go into social work because my parents hated social work and I was really rebellious. And there was also a moment in my childhood, basically from the age of 10 until I was 20, where I really disavowed being Vietnamese, when I just didn't really want to be Vietnamese at all. I realized, I thought it was embarrassing. I didn't want to speak Vietnamese. I didn't want to be Vietnamese. And I think a lot of kids go through that period in their time when they just don't really want, they don't understand. They're trying to find out who they are. And I think it can be kind of a painful period. So a lot of that really kind of helped to shape me as to what I want to do, which is, if there had been a really cool organization and some really cool programs that would help kids, feel proud of who they are as Vietnamese, learn to speak Vietnamese, I think that would be really neat and something that's really necessary. So that's where my pride of being Vietnamese started intersecting, and so that's why I started becoming more involved in community work. Second question, what is leadership? Is that the question? Yeah. I think leadership is just having a vision and then getting people to do stuff. I mean, I think that's what leadership is to me.
So, một người lãnh đạo, right? Leadership, một người lãnh đạo là như thế nào? Thì Kiệt nghĩ đó là một người lãnh đạo là một người mà có một cái tư tưởng, có một cái ý muốn và không có ngại đứng ra để làm cái công việc đó. Không phải là không có ngại, có nghĩa là mình đứng ra làm, chứ không phải là không có sợ. Ai cũng sợ hết. Mình đứng ra mình làm một chuyện gì mà mình chưa bao giờ làm là mình sẽ sợ, right? Nhưng mà mình không có ngại đứng ra làm và kêu gọi được tất cả những người xung quanh mình theo cái bước của mình để đạt được cái ý tưởng đó. Đó là một người lãnh đạo. So, let's put that into English, right? Okay. So leadership to me is if if you have a vision and a dream, then you're not afraid, as a leader, you're not afraid to go out and tackle that dream. You might have a lot of reservations. You might have a lot of anxiety implementing it, but you're not afraid to take that step. You're not afraid to gather people who may have similar vision as you, who has been sitting on the fence, and get them together and just go do it. Okay, I'm not advertising for Nike. But just go and do it. And in the process, a good leader will make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Một người lãnh đạo mà bao giờ cũng làm tất cả mọi việc đúng, always correct, thì là một cái người lãnh đạo, a leader who has not examined himself. Okay. You have to be willing to fail. You have to accept that sometimes you don't do things correctly, and that people give you input, you accept them. So, for me, a good quality in a leader is someone who has lots of empathy for folks around you. You have to be able to appreciate the thoughts around you. Right? You have to be able to work with people. A good leader is not a dictator. No dictator is a good leader. They're just good with their power and their guns. But they can't work with you. They tell you what to do, and they work on you based on fear, right? A good leader works together with you. A good leader knows how to use people who are smarter than them to get things done, right? So, and another a quality that is important in a good leader is someone who's open-minded. You have to be open to suggestions because your ideas are not always the best. And your ideas may be a good idea that gets supplemented by a brilliant person out there to become a grand idea. And then you say, hey, that's cool, let's go get it done. Right? You have to be able to be open to those things. And I think one of another important trait is a good leader needs to know how to listen. Sometimes just shut up, shoot out an idea and shut up and listen to everybody else. Listen to what they have to say. Tại vì nếu mà cái người leader, cái người lãnh đạo đó mà chỉ có nói mà không có nghe ai hết á, thì coi như là họ chỉ có đưa ra cái ý kiến của họ và họ ép những người khác theo. Và như vậy á, thì không có phải là mình làm một cái công việc chung, nhất là nếu mà làm việc ở trong cộng đồng. If you work in a community, you have to share with your community. You have to respect what they have to say. You have to respect what they think. And you have to absorb that and then find some common grounds, as they say here in Seattle. Find the common grounds and make it happen. Thank you.
Đúng là một người lãnh đạo có gan mơ ước những gì mình mơ ước, rồi có can đảm để nói tôi sẽ làm. Rồi khi nói tôi sẽ làm thì sẽ thuyết phục được những người xung quanh mình để giúp vô một tay. Nhưng cái quan trọng hơn là nếu không ai giúp mình cũng có gan bắt đầu nó. Tại vì rất là nhiều người phải thấy cái gì nó thực hiện rồi thì người ta mới muốn tham gia vô để giúp. Còn cái bước đầu đó rất là nhiều người có nhiều ý ra ý vô, và nếu mà mình ngưng ngay đó thì có thể cái chương trình gì đó mà mình mơ ước, mình muốn mang đến cho cộng đồng, nó sẽ không thành